Now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Faith Oy. Dr. Oy is the Extension Professor and Director of Pest Management University, which is an academy that provides state-of-the-art education and hands-on training for the industry based out of the University of Florida. She works at a grassroots level and does applied research to solve industry problems. She's published over 250 extension and technical articles and has done around 350 talks. So let's add another one to her list, and help me in welcoming Dr. Faith Oy.
Am I on? Yay! Okay, thank you so much for having me, y'all. So it's been a while since I've been here to Purdue, and I gotta tell you, I really struggle with this topic of One Health. So I'm gonna put our title up here. It's One Health, where the pest control industry fits into One Health, the One Health initiative by protecting health and property. So let me see, I'm gonna pick on Stan. When I have 5 minutes left, can you give me a signal? Because I'm going to get on a roll. And yes, it's very hard to tell. I have 5 minutes next, Stan. Okay, so who has heard of One Health? Yeah? Okay, that's really good. So where do you think the pest control industry fits into One Health for public health and to protect properties? Shout it out. It's both, but give me some examples. Where do we fit into that grand scheme of public health?
Roll right off the bat, and then of course all the other bed bugs, mosquitoes.
Rodent control, bed bugs, mosquitoes. What about protecting property? Termites. Okay, that's awesome. And I spy Mike Bentley out in the audience. I'm going to have somebody else to pick on. He's sliding down in his chair. Can you see him right now? The short answer is that the pest control industry should fit everywhere in One Health. The question is, why aren't we at the table for One Health? So, does this resonate with any of y'all? The first time I was asked to give a talk on One Health was 2019 at Follow. And so in other countries, this concept of One Health seems to have kind of taken off a little bit more and has included the pest control industry there. So when I was doing that research in 2019, it was a beast, this One Health, the description. It was really messy. It was really overwhelming to take a look at, and it had a massive description, definition. It was humans, it was animals, it was the environment, and then it got here and must function across several levels of government agencies and private organizations. Does it work for us now that way? Right? So when I saw that, I was thinking, this is great. These are all great goals, but how are we going to get there? Right? I'm sorry?
Get rid of the government.
Get rid of the government. Okay. Well, that's going to be a little bit difficult to do, but there's something to be said about working with federal and state agencies, right, to provide infrastructure and support. This is the current framework for One Health. People who protect human, animal, and environmental health. So it seems like our industry fits in here. But take a look at this graphic, y'all. Where do we fit in that infographic? I'm sorry? So we fit all of it, but there's nothing about the built environment in the infographic. There's nothing that talks about structures. Most people in the United States are not living in an agricultural setting, right? So in my mind, we're still kind of outside that center part of what this whole One Health concept is. So we're going to do all this via, I'm just losing my, Chet, I'm going to take your pointer. I need your pointer. So via coordinating, communicating, and collaborating to achieve the best health outcomes for people, animals. Thank you. Where is it? And it's on here. Oh, there it is. Okay, to achieve the best health outcomes for people, animal, plants, and our environment. So that's all fine and good. But we're supposed to be talking about this in the context of our pest management industry. So to me, the One Health definition is a great goal, which is very different than implementation. Has anybody heard of a plan to implement One Health? The goal is to be all unified, right? To have all this between animals and people and the environment. So I haven't heard of it either. And we in the pest management industry, we're on the implementation side of One Health. But here's the other thing. A lot of people view us as a cost, right? So it's a little bit hard sometimes for us to get in the door on this One Health action here. Let me go back. So here's the current One Health framework, and it focuses on these subject areas: zoonotic diseases, vector-borne infections, animal safety, antimicrobial resistance. But it doesn't exclude us putting our topics in, so I think we need to add our topics. So the bottom line is that there's no federal agency who's claiming One Health, right? There's not a state agency. When you look at the funding lines, it's really coming at the university level, and they're just putting that title One Health on it. I think our industry needs to put our footprint in the concept of One Health and kind of get the credit for what we do and how we contribute to this very important initiative. There we go. So I found these reviews, and they're kind of cool. So they're short, and I'm going to go through a couple of slides here because I think this is going to help us understand why we are where we are here. So if you look at this origins and lineage of One Health, in the 17th and 18th centuries, human-animal medicine began to be connected through comparative medicine. So up until then, people were not making the connection between animals and humans, and that's kind of important because that means they didn't have any animal models. So back in this time, we had smallpox, we had all kinds of diseases, and there was this guy, Edward Jenner. And he's largely credited with developing a rabies vaccine that used an animal model. That's the first time an animal model was used. He's also credited with a smallpox vaccine, and he was doing stuff like, well, I found an 8-year-old boy here. And he actually took the pus from smallpox pox and inoculated that 8-year-old boy to see if it was going to transmit the virus. The boy recovered, and then he took pus again and he inoculated that kid again and went, oh, he survived. There must be something to this immunity issue. There were no human testing guidelines back then, right? And he was using human subjects, and this concept of studying animals and then trying to transfer the information to humans so we can develop animal models, that was really important. So this part here was, I'm not good with this, one off. Okay, this part here is about the time we were also doing rodent control in our industry. So here's Jack Black, who's Her Majesty's rat catcher. We have been an important partner in One Health from the start. It was just a different name back then, and people weren't making that connection. So then along came this guy, Koch, right? How many of you guys have heard of Koch's postulates? No? Yes? Mark has? So Koch was very important because he was actually the first to connect human-animal health with the environment, okay? And these are the three elements that actually comprise One Health. I don't think I can do this two-handed thing. So here's Koch. And my friend put that, she was in plant pathology, and she said it's not Koch, so put this on his shirt so everybody remembers it's like Koch. So this is a very well-known process. So you have to find find the microorganism in a sick organism, and you're not going to find it in healthy organisms. You isolate that disease-causing organism, you infect the healthy one, and then you have to have it recovered from that organism. And it's this whole process thing, and it works, and everybody uses it. Okay, which is really different than somebody. This is what separates us in the sciences from people who just decide, I'm going to just say it, and I'm going to say it a lot, and then it's going to be true. So I'm going to tie this into something that I'm going to present a little bit later in the presentation. So this is really different than just saying something like this, right? This is the craziest plant that I've ever seen. I thought this piece of lint was actually some sort of sentient life form hovering around my kitchen floor. I'm going to talk about this in Morgellen's section, because that is one area of One Health that our industry is really involved in here. We then transferred over. I'm going to fast forward us to this guinea pig area, which required animal testing, and that was the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, 1938, and the Nuremberg Code, right? So we don't test on humans, we test on animals now. And then we had the creation of the Center of Disease Control. So all this time in our history, people have been trying and struggling to get this whole concept of One Health together. At universities, we talk about we can't be siloed, right? We're supposed to be transdisciplinary. And I don't know about you, Barry, but sometimes I have a hard time getting around the hallway in my own department, right? Because we get involved, and that's how we get siloed there. So in 1946, the CDC was born, and it absorbed the Public Health Service Plague Suppressive Lab. So we can start to see some of the connections of why One Health started on that human health side and disease transmission. The CDC was successful because they had resources, they had political support, and they had leadership, okay? So Dr. Alexander Langmuir was the first chief epidemiologist, and he's the one that set up the collaborations with the states and whatnot so that the CDC at the federal level could support them. In 1984, this guy Calvin termed this one medicine concept. And it was really clinically focused. And so I was talking to my husband about this talk, and he said, clinically focused to me means they were treating symptoms, right? They're doctors in there, and they're going into, they're practicing, they're not doing the research side of things. So the biomedical view was that medicine had more influence regarding public health issues. There's a difference between focusing on individual clinical issues versus population and public health. They're different goals, okay? So One Health was different than the One Medicine part. In 2003, William Koresh, who's now with a private organization, coined the term One Health. One World, One Health was adopted and endorsed in 2008 by a whole bunch of really important agencies there. In 2009, Lonnie King became the director of the Zoonotic, Enteric, and vector-borne disease section inside the CDC. So I'm sitting here going, where is pest control in all this? So zoonoses, right, is when some animal disease transfers over to human. He established contact with other animal organizations, and this is key. He was able to increase funding for this concept. And so we have a lot of folks in the medical community side of things who have influenced the policy surrounding One Health. And there was a huge emphasis on transdisciplinary support. Okay. So this sounds all fine and good, but when I started thinking about our industry, right? So in our industry, here's some measures of the importance of what we do from a scientist's perspective. Who's published in a One Health journal here? Yeah? So the second question is moved, because it was going to be what publication. There's actually folks who do meta-analyses on publications, rate of publication. And why do they do that? It's because publications are kind of the currency of science. It's a measure of the health of the discipline. Because if you don't have money to do the research, you're not going to be publishing. Okay, so I'm going to show some startling, I thought they were startling statistics here. So they have this beautiful graph, and just to go over, right, zoonoses are diseases that cross from animals to humans, and we probably fit more in this food safety, vector-borne disease part. So here are the number of publications for vector-borne disease, and here are the number of publications for food safety here. Everything else is microbial resistance and zoonoses. There's nothing really that we touch directly in these types of publications that I could see, except for the tick and mosquito stuff that's coming out right now. So when you read through this paper, it talks about here are the most cited papers in microbial and anti-resistance now. The most prolific authors, 5 of the 21 are from the US, but there's not a single entomologist on here. And in order to publish, it's a pay-to-play game. So we have to have at least $2,000 to $4,000, maybe more, to actually get our science out into the public domain to be shareable and usable with the industry. And if you do the research but you don't have the money to publish, you're stopped. So, we've been talking about, I know PCT has done a really good job of covering the case of the disappearing urban entomologists and what's happening with their discipline. But we're kind of at this critical point right now because we have some labs where these publication fees are becoming an issue, right? So without the publication, it's not going to be out there, the information. So I started digging around to see what funding opportunities are there for us, for our industry in the One Health space. And the typical funding agencies that we go to, there's nothing. Okay, so the USDA had one, but it's all related to COVID here. So the good news is that it could be a good time for us to be innovative. So if you haven't seen this paper, right, Sydney Crawley actually wrote her highlights talk up, and her highlights talk, it's the Entomological Society invites, I guess you're elected into this space right now to give a review of what has happened in our discipline for the year. So it's an honor to get this presentation. And her update for the research for 2022, she framed it as One Health. And this is actually the only publication in the entomological space that I could directly connect our discipline, the urban entomology, urban pest management part, with One Health. So she has, and others, have emphasized the need to effectively change policy. And why is this important for our industry? It's because without the support, without all of us, without us stitching this pipeline together of research and industry and pest control companies, it's just going to be really difficult. It's going to be a really difficult time for us coming up. Oh, there we go. So it's time to adapt, right? We know this guy. So here's something. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. So we're adaptable, right, in this industry. We have always been able. We get curves thrown at us all the time. COVID happened. Everybody was scared, right? We were losing our commercial accounts, and what happened? We pivoted. We've gone through many, many times where I've seen this industry adapt. So I'm going to give you an example now of a project that I've been involved in that is actually under the One Health umbrella, but not as defined by CDC. So how many of you are familiar with delusory parasitosis? Oh, everybody. Okay, somebody give me a definition. unshakable belief that your body is infested with organisms that don't exactly exist. This is me. This is so. It could be math. Okay, I got that too in here, okay? So Karen Vale and Nancy Hinkle and I overlap as graduate students, and now we look at these meetings and we go, how did we get to be the old people? You know? So I'm at this meeting, and Karen had called me before, and this is kind of a summary of the conversation. One of your collaborators on a working group for delusory parasitosis is with Nancy Hinkle, and this is me. Okay? So why don't I want to be involved in this group? You become a target? What else? Really time-consuming, right? What's that? You're really not looking at bugs, so that's part of it, right? So it's, but working in this space, this DP space, is really time-consuming. I have this massive extension appointment, and my county agents have been asking for this, right? They've been asking for us to develop training for them and materials, and I'm thinking, oh man. So at first I was like, no, I'll give you everything I've developed so far, but just so, okay? So then she's doing, well, I guess I'm gonna go back to my room and work on the grant. So I'm feeling guilty, and she's going off because I'm going to another session, you see? So the short of it is, I'm on the grant, okay? And here's what the summary is. This grant, we will use a One Health approach, including psychologists, psychiatrists, along with extension entomologists and pest management professionals, to maintain and enhance sustainable IPM infrastructure, but better equipping, and it's like blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's a big old project here, and there's an attorney involved. Okay. So we put together all our materials based on all of our experience, because now we're the old guys, right? We had like a bunch of these DP cases come through. We send this thing to the attorney, and the attorney's job is to what? It's to protect the institution, right? They're not caring about us actually directly helping these individuals. You can't say that. You're not a medical doctor. You can't make a diagnosis. You can't examine them. You can't touch specimens that are from human bodily fluids. You can't. And so this to me became an example of the difficulty that we have with One Health when we're trying to do things transdisciplinarily, because the attorney has one motivation, and her job is to protect the institution, and she's doing a good job at that, and we're going, we can't help these people if we can't look at a sample, right? So we're at odds in terms of our goals, I guess, and needs. So it's been a lot of wordsmithing. It's taken a long time. It was kind of my what did you do for your summer vacation project, because Nancy and Karen and Eric Benson and I were working like every week. We just set a time, and it wasn't anything earth-shaking. We were arguing over words because we're afraid about what the attorney was going to come back with here. So we do have deliverables here. They're going to be up on our website pretty soon. It's a general guide with a checklist that somebody can take to a doctor and help the doctor with the diagnosis. Okay, so how many of you guys have had calls or had conversations with doctors when you have a delusory parasitosis case? No? We don't, right? We don't have a conversation with them. They're the ones that we need to get inroads with. And Karen's done a really good job. She's trying to get our foot in the door to talk with the medical community here. So we have a presentation for training, and the training, the reason that we have a PowerPoint is to maintain consistency across training here. We have a manual, delusory parasitosis now, and it has detailed information, and we created this flow chart here for agents or other folks in extension. I lost it here. So who said meth mites? right? So Nancy Hinkle sends this. She's working all the time. Sorry, I can't get a hold of this thing. So she sends this is her Saturday email to us. It's like, Nancy, what are you doing? Hunting meth mites by a cigarette fire, a case study. So here's this, right? So here's why we get these things, right? This guy is going, I was hunting annoying ants by cigarette fire. However, they were fire resistant and skit. And then he tells the doctor, oh, by the way, this only happens when I have taken meth. So this is how the doctor knew, right, that he was having this whole meth mite syndrome. So the delusory parasitosis area for us within our industry, it's actually a pretty good one to be putting under One Health because we touch so many other disciplines and we touch things, and you're right, it's frustrating because there are no bugs, okay? Don't ever treat you as if you have this delusory parasitosis and think that it's somebody who's suffering from this. What's that? So they insist upon it, they want it done. So I'm gonna show you some of the things. It's really hard, right? Because the doctors have punted them, extension is going, we don't know what to do with this, we can't make a recommendation. And these people are really suffering. So we do need to treat them with compassion here. So we have a working group. And there are most of us in academia, right? We're like, we want our names on the publication. Yeah, not this group. We're all going, don't ever put my name on this publication. You can put my institution's logo on it, but not my name, okay? So here's part of the PowerPoint. We start off with a definition here, and it's exactly like Shep had talked about. So it's that it's a neuropsychiatric condition that results in the mistaken belief without medical or entomological evidence. Yeah? So we talked about it as delusional parasitosis, delusive parasitosis, egg-bomb syndrome. I think the current wording is going to be delusional infestation. I think that's what the publications are starting to go with. And we start with, yep, you can get itching from things that are real, and here's what they look like. So we have things like bed bugs. Oh, let me do this. Bed bugs, mosquitoes. That's a tick in there. I'm really having problems advancing this, y'all. I'm sorry. Okay. So scabies, right, are for real. You can have mites that burrow subcutaneously, and that can cause itching there. Back up here. We answer the question. We get this. Should you spray? And generally the answer is no. Pests should be identified before pesticides are applied. You have to consult an entomologist. These are the types of recommendations that we've been working on. So I love this. I was talking with a male last night, and I love this picture because it's one of the first delusional parasitosis cases that I went to when I had my first job at Auburn. It is a beautiful pattern of wettable powder spray. It is not. Right? So this poor woman had sprayed the inside of her house. She sprayed her couch. These are pyrethroids. She's sitting in that chair and then wondering why she's having itching right on the back of her legs. I've had people do that with mending. I've had people wrap themselves in gasoline blankets. Hopefully they're not smoking bed. Right? So the misuse of products can make things work here. We have a checklist of arthropods that can cause itching here. Everything that's blue has a link. It's a link to a referee publication that matches so that, extension was supposed to be science-based here. And then this. We're not allowed to look at scab, skin, blood, other bodily fluids. These should only be handled by right? So how do these delusory parasitosis people bring the samples to you? In a Ziploc bag, what is it? Scab, skin, right? Bodily fluids. And so this is a little bit of a disconnect with the legal counsel there. We have a checklist on potential environmental and medical causes there as well. And in the manual, we have sections like, here's your contact. We're not supposed to do a physical examination. How many of you have had customers come in and start to disrobe because they want to show you stuff, right? Okay, you need to have a second person there if somebody like that is coming in. So this is the one that I was like, oh, I don't know about this. You need to dissuade them from their own pest control efforts and suggest positive behaviors such as reducing clutter. This is true, right? But what's the probability of success? Zero. Okay, I don't know about that. As with all individuals, be open-minded, polite, and respectful, and be prepared for belligerence. So this side here, where this person, so this stuff is all on Facebook too now, right? So if you type in Morgellons or unidentified skin, something or other, your Facebook groups, it's actually become a little bit worse in my opinion because they're in a group together and they share their experiences. So what's the probability of this guy who believes he has a sentient life form living on his kitchen floor being open-minded, right? He has no context for science. He doesn't care about Koch's postulates. He's going to be, I have a sentient life form living on my floor. So during the course of talking with the individuals, so one of the questions we ask is, well, tell us what's going on here. And that's part of our survey. And what do we get? I'm desperate. You have to help me. So we had a little bit different wording on that one, and it almost sounded like, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we kind of changed that around a little bit there. They are very visible, but then they proceed to describe their appearance. There are millions of them, but I can't catch one. I've been infested for a year or more. I've consulted a dozen doctors, and none of them knows what it is. The doctors act as if I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. Okay, we get this all the time in the offices here. So here's some of the other questions. What do you think is going on? Describe the symptoms. When did the problem first occur? When we start going down this list here, it can take hours. And that's why this is a very challenging part of what we do in pest control here. And then there's alternative therapies. Okay, don't get me started on home remedies. I went down that rabbit hole on home remedies for a bunch of other pest control things. But look, you can put rice vinegar and Vaseline on and apply it with a hexagon sponge or Mr. Clean Spin, I don't know what that is. Let them sit in the area like underwater or under raw strap on Morgellons hump. Follow this Vaseline with cocoa butter you can put on thick and keep rubbing and massaging until they hit, until the things in here pop out. Or you can do urine therapy. Okay? So these are the kinds of things that are circulating on the internet. And in the absence of any kind of credible information, this is what is coming up. And then we have to shake these people of the belief that they have. And that's become even more ingrained. So this is an extreme case of having to do transdisciplinary work if we ever want to make headway with these folks who are suffering from delusions and infestations. And again, I want to go back to this, kind of like for people, for us, they're sitting in this room going, ha ha ha, but they really are suffering. So we need to treat them compassionately, but this is kind of going beyond the pale, right, at this point. What's that? I didn't even click on it because I didn't want my work computer to have a urine therapy someplace out in the. So here's pest control in One Health. We are already doing and have been doing since the beginning, right? We have been an important One Health partner since the beginning, and I'm going to give you some examples of how we have already contributed. When we save food from rodents eating 1/3 or 20% to 1/3 of the food that is out there, we can help stem hunger. So the number of people starving, we passed like 8 billion people right on the earth this past year. So the number of people who go to bed hungry or in starvation mode, it's a lot. It would be enough to be the 3rd largest country if we put it all together. So our industry is really important in trying to conserve food because of that. Here's a sad stat, right? The poor, the folks who die mostly are going to be kids, right, under 5. This year, some 874 million people in the world don't have enough food to live an active life. So I eat a lot, okay, and when I don't get food on time, I'm cranky and I don't perform well. And so that's become, I get that. So you guys are used to running all day. I know some of you don't stop. You don't eat during the day and then you eat a lot when you get home. Okay, I don't run like that. I can't imagine not having enough food to have daily living activities there. The collapse of social services is a global problem. And we're starting to see medieval diseases coming back. And it's popping up in the literature. So typhus has come back. If we have a refugee situation, typhus can come back, right? We have instances of plague popping up. I didn't realize that Madagascar had a plague season. So one of my friends over at the Emerging Pathogens Institute, I was horrified a few years ago when Madagascar had, like, I don't know how many, couple of hundred people died because of plague. You know, you can cure the plague with about 15 cents worth of Cipro, but they don't have access, right, to the medical care. And the things that they were trying to do, because they had to do something, right? It was like spraying and fogging, and I was like, that's not going to take care of this problem here, because it was pneumonic. It became pneumonic plague. But I call over to Emerging Pathogens, and they're like, oh yeah, they have a season. And I just was in disbelief there. So, invasive species, this is how so those are the human aspects, right? We impact humans here. The invasive species can be our contribution to zoonoses, and it can be our contribution to protecting the environment. But I'm also talking about the built environment here. So this is an older number at this point already, and let me see. Why can I get that? So 423 billion annually in 2019. The cost now, because people are actually looking at how much invasive species cost, it's astronomical. And none of the structural pests that we deal with, like termites, are on a list that any federal agency is actually looking for. So ultimately it becomes an issue with the pest control industry, or for the pest control industry, because for me, this is what I get. This is not normal in my area. It's a sharp pest control guy. Damage is different. Behavior is different. They look kind of different. So we discovered in the state of Florida, Formosan subterranean termite, because a pest control operator brought it into the University of Florida and said, this is not normal for my area. So, you know, we've been talking about ID for our guys, and really, for a very long time. There are like millions of insects out there and other pests as well. It's not reasonable for us to expect our technicians to memorize 2 million. Heck, I don't even know. That's why we have Lyle Boss, an insect ID guy. That's what he does all day long, okay? But what you can do is say, this is normal for your area. So it's probably about a dozen, right, pests. And what then the pest control technician can do is go, this is something that's out of my range. And then we take it to the university, and then we bring it to Purdue, and get it on the So this is the thing that frustrates me. Proactive management sustainably reduces future costs at the $1 trillion level. What could we do in this industry with $1 trillion if it became available to us? to support this industry annually. Okay? So prevention, right? It's like here. Prevention is really important here. So here are the 10 costliest taxa. I think this is an argument that should be made to provide support for PMPs at a global level. The most expensive insect is going to be Aedes aegypti, then we have Rattus rattus, Mus musculus. We have cats if you're in that area, right, if you do that wildlife trapping. And then Coctotermes formosanus, right, that's our Formosan subterranean termite. The fire ant, which turns out it's now our gift to the rest of the world. We're exporting fire ants, which is not a good thing. That's the brown tree snake there, bullworm, Lymantria dispar, that's African bee, and that's screwworm. So these are the things that are the most costly taxa we run into all the time. Okay? Okay, you guys still with me? Yeah? Check this out. Nobody's going, ooh, you guys are so quiet. What is this? It's a tick in an eyeball. Okay? So I'm going to transition into some things that we are currently working on in the One Health space. And of course, tick control is going to be one of those things that is important for us. So remember I told you that I went to that meeting, that follow-up meeting in 2019? And I felt like I was like the entertainment on the side because most of the meeting was about this tick, Haemophilus longicornis. How many of you guys have heard of that? The Asian longhorn tick, right? It's the first tick that has become invasive in I don't know decades in the United States. We first thought that it came through the port in New Jersey. But then we're finding out people have gone back and looked at their collections. It looks like West Virginia was actually the first record from a collection from 2010 is what they found. So we have, that's free, take a picture of this. You guys can have all of this information here. The problem is that it's parthenogenetic. It does not need a male to reproduce. It's been known to exsanguinate sheep in Australia. And it's gonna move, right? It's moving. There's a working group that is working on distribution. Check this host range out. So we have dogs, cows, goats, sheep, horses, white-tailed deer. I mean, a whole bunch of stuff here. And it's known to parasitize humans outside the United States. So I'm thinking, okay, I live in Florida. We have folks from up north come down to Florida during the winter. Who is looking at people's cars when they bring their dogs down to Florida from the north? Who is looking in Florida for this tick at all? Okay? We have no surveillance system set up, and that's a problem for us. So that's one of the things that if we had $1 trillion available for our industry, I would love to see a surveillance system set up for things that are going to impact our industry. And our industry impacts the majority. We impact everybody, actually, right, in the U.S. and beyond here. So some of the impacts include, they're looking at what this tick can vector here. So when I was at follow-up, the only thing they were talking about was this. It was severe fever with thrombocytopenia virus. Okay? The fatality rate is 10 to 30%. There's no cure, and that's why you're worried about this tick. So right now in the US, we don't have any evidence of that virus being transmitted in the US, but it is in other parts of the world. What do we have that will stop that virus from coming into the US and then becoming a problem? I don't know, right? I don't know what our surveillance system is. We have labs that are looking at how competent this tick is as a vector. And in one lab, they were able to prove a transmission of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Y'all know how deadly Rocky Mountain spotted fever is, right? So it's a lab study, and I'm always cautioned, right? You can make a lot of things happen in the lab that won't happen out in nature. But the fact that people are looking at it, might give us pause. It transmits Powassan's in other countries. For us, Powassan's virus is, the main vector is going to be Ixodes scapularis. But ticks are a really important part of what we, tick control is important in terms of what we do. And there's a paper that recognizes that paper that talked about the biometrics, bibliometrics, excuse me, of publications. They talked about how important the pest control side of things were. But the rest of the stuff that I was reading, there's not really a mention of the control aspect. They're really looking at the basic research here. So other things and the ways that we contribute, right, to the One Health mission, bedbug control because of the histamine levels. So we have also German cockroach control. So proteins and allergens is part of food safety. What we do with the German cockroach control. So I gave a talk in. I gave several talks in Canada this year. I don't remember which Canadian meeting it was, but they have now started to have a more serious issue with German cockroaches. They have products. They don't have insect growth regulators registered, right? So control becomes an issue when it gets into food handling out there. So there's an issue of pathogens because there's an association, but because we don't have funding, we haven't been able to do the experiments to complete Cook's postulates to actually demonstrate that cockroaches are responsible for transmitting a bunch of foodborne pathogens there. So they're responsible for other contamination. We can decrease food waste. We can protect human health, including yours. So, this one here, we've known this for a long time. Controlling cockroaches can mitigate asthma. And so there's actually a study by Renito that was done in I think it was published in 2017, that actually connected just using baiting will reduce cockroach populations and therefore the allergen levels to a point where asthma is not an issue anymore. And that's really important for us to know. Do you have any idea how extensive human trials are right now? Right? For us to make that kind of connection. I can't even begin to think about the paperwork. I have to fill out paperwork when we do a survey because we touch a human. Yeah? So whenever we have a human interaction, it sets off a whole bunch of other paperwork here. I don't know, Barry, if that's the same here for you guys. Better discuss over. I agree. I totally agree, okay? So, we talked about the fly part. This is how we contribute to public health again. So during COVID, restaurants shut down. They got hammered, right? And now you got a call. Restaurants are trying to open up. And we have some pretty wealthy areas down in South Florida. And a high-end mall was built. I don't know if it's your neck of the woods yet, but a high-end mall was built in the middle of agriculture. So these restaurants were trying to open up. They took their seating outside, and then they had a fly ball. Right? So the pest control guys are calling me up going, what do we do? Well, I don't know what to tell you because you're surrounded by equestrian centers. How much, I don't know, looking at Mark, how much poop do you need for flies to survive, right? Not much. And they had plenty because they were surrounded by equestrian centers. What's the flight distance for a housefly? What's the flight radius? I'm looking at Pat because I think she said it. 20 miles. It's a 20-mile radius. Do you think, so this is, you know, our recommendations. Oh, you have to destroy the habitat. 20-mile radius, you're gonna find that? Really? We had no products. We wrote a grant. We were looking at insecticide resistance. We have insecticide resistance, but we've never done that kind of survey in the state of Florida before. So this situation is still not resolved. It's a lawsuit right now, right? Whose fault is it that there are flies? Even the health department knew that it was a really tough problem. But this is again, I kept wondering, we should start framing these things in terms So One Health, right? Because look, this is an old list. I don't know that anybody has updated this list, but we have hundreds of pathogens where flies are demonstrated to transmit pathogens, okay? So there's Musca, Domestica, and it's E. coli, Salmonella, Shigella. So those are the references that are associated with the transmission there. So that's our fly dispersal. We actually did market capture to figure that out. We caught the flies, let them go, and then tried to collect them from different sites. So up to 20 miles, that's a lot. The other thing that I look at is this, the WHO emerging pathogens list. Why would I look at this? No, actually, I think that we're making headway with the guinea worm, right, on that. But I look at this because we are global, and we don't know what's going to end up in our country. You know, I was sitting in a meeting, I'm going to date myself, and I'm looking at Stan. It was CDC, no, because it's mosquitoes, and they were talking about chikungunya, and I was like, I can't even spell it, so I'm not going to worry about it, right? Well, we were ground zero for locally acquired chikungunya in Florida. We were ground zero for Zika, locally acquired in Florida. We're ground zero for a bunch of stuff. And that was a lesson to me, to keep track of what is going on globally. Because the state is large, we have a lot of people coming in and out. So I look at this list every once in a while, and here are the priority diseases for WHO. There's Ebola, right, out there, but there's Nipah virus, Lassa fever. I keep hearing Bobby Corrigan talk about Lassa fever. It's kind of scary. Rift Valley fever, but these are the vectors, just in broad groups here, that we generally have to control. Okay, what could we do with $1 trillion to control these vectors or prevent this kind of outbreak in our home space, in our communities here? So this is one that I keep coming back to because it keeps popping up, is this Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. I had heard about it when I took medical entomology, and I was like, oh, this is really bad. And we had, you know, because I'm old, right? We had really old black and white grainy pictures about what Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever looked like. And I don't know, Stan, it's probably from the Armed Forces Pest Management Forces where those pictures came from. And then it popped up in my feed from Forbes magazine, which is a business journal. And they were talking about an outbreak in Iran. We have troops in conflicts all over the world right now. Any tick that will make your eyes bleed is not good. And we don't want it, okay? So that is what can happen to you as one of the symptoms. There are much worse things that can happen to you there. So I look at this list, you know, look, it's a COVID, right? COVID. So these are the emerging pathogens that I like to kind of take a look at because oftentimes there's a vector that we take care of. And then there's disease X. Does anybody have any guesses? Stan and I have talked about maybe the next mosquito virus, right? What might be coming around the bend here. But are we prepared? And the answer is no. Okay, and I'm talking we in terms of a nation. So the CDC came out with a report that said that the vector control districts were not prepared, and they were missing at least one competency. So that means what they do is they come to the industry and they say, help us, right? So it falls on the industry, and that's why we're essential services, and that's why we need to have a place at the table for One Health, because ultimately we're the implementation arm for One Health, okay? So that's my rationale. Does that make sense to you guys? I don't know, it makes sense to me. So you guys can see this, right? So this is not the whiny part, it's just status of our discipline from an academic standpoint here. In this annual review, there are 93 urban entomologists from 1940 to present. There are 55 active urban entomologists, 6 of us with extension appointments. And this is a global count, okay, in academia. We're dwindling. And there's got to be, and we're always looking for some way to, how can we help the industry better? And some of us are just, it's just we're gonna have to do a rethink on this, is what I'm saying. So the concept of One Health seems overwhelmingly large, but it does come down to this, to individuals. Well-trained and educated pest management professionals are a critical component of One Health outcomes. So this is one of my closing slides in 2019, and it remains true today. So this is from Sydney's paper here, where she's also calling for policy change and people who are willing to go out and do that kind of policy work. And I tell you, this industry has been extraordinarily successful in getting some policy things done. And PMA is a great example, right, of how you guys work together with legislators. I know state associations do it. When we go to our legislators, they're looking at us like we're just a bunch of academics, right? They don't, well, I know we're filming, they don't care what we say. They care what you say. Okay, so this is going to be very helpful if the industry can be involved here. So this is how I think pest control fits into One Health. This is my elevator speech, and some of you guys may have seen this before, so I'm going to apologize. I'm going to turn my back to you so I can read this right now. The pest control industry protects public health and property, including critical infrastructure from pests. We protect hospitals, assisted care facilities, nursing homes, schools, every government building, the places you eat, work, and play, from pests such as rodents, bedbugs, triggering cockroaches, medically important stinging insects, wildlife, and pests that contaminate our food supply chain. Pest control services improve and protect our health, the places we live, work, and the quality of the air that we breathe, and the water that we drink, and the food that we eat. We are the most effective defense against mosquitoes, ticks, rodents, cockroaches, flies, and other public health pests, including those that transmit pathogens that cause Zika, dengue, West Nile, Lyme disease, and a host of foodborne pathogens. We also protect animal health and yours by controlling fleas that carry tapeworms, mosquitoes that carry heartworms, ticks that transmit numerous pathogens. We are often the first line of defense against invasive species such as the Formosan and Asian termites that damage not only structures but contents, including paper documents. And we do this while putting your safety first. So you may see us doing some things differently than what you are used to. So I love this shirt. Somebody needs to make something similar for us that we can get. I'm a pest control technician. What's your superpower? So I just want to thank you all for having me today to talk about this very important topic. I hope that it generated some thoughts at least on how we can put our footprint in One Health. And you guys rock. I really appreciate this industry, so thank you. Body lice on the rise. I don't know of anybody that's certainly aiming for body lice, but there are some publications that are looking at Bartonella, pediculosis in other countries. I don't see it from the U.S. I don't know. I saw me. Where are you? Do you know? Have you heard? Yeah. So I wouldn't think it's out of the realm with our homeless population increasing. Yeah. Stan?
Yes.
Comments? Yes. So we're getting there. We're still tweaking. It'll be formatted and up online someplace. I think we're gonna have to put it up online for our group. But I have to figure that part out. So. Body lice. Do you have any? You don't currently? Okay. Yeah.
In any of these refugee disaster situations that we continue to see all around the world, war-torn areas, rodents are usually one of the initial problems, and then body lice comes in, and then with that you get lots of typhus, which is still a huge problem in certain parts of the world. And it can all come here overnight.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments? I'm gonna do termites tomorrow. Come see that. I love that part too. Okay. We'll see ya.